Victor asked me to convey his regrets that he's not been able to attend this very nice conference, and send regards to all his friends that he will miss this time. Well, this is today I'm going to present the work that we are working together and the one that he planned to present. This is about robust clustering, and it is a joint work with Gonzalez, Juan Domingo. He is a student that is being co-supervised by Victor and me. And of course, Victor Yochai, you know, and the other is me. So clustering, we all know, is a very useful tool for unsupervised data analysis and learning. The purpose of clustering is to divide a number of objects into groups which are homogeneous. And one way to do that is by this, if you know the cluster centers, you are in a better situation because now you can assign the points to clusters with centers which are closer to these points, as in this formula here. And in this talks, then we are going to concentrate on ways for estimating the centers. Because if you estimate the centers, at least more than half of the problem is solved because the assignment of the points now can be done in an easier way. One very popular way of estimating the centers of clusters is k-means. K-means has been introduced by Steinhaus in '56 and popularized by McQueen in '67. It's conceptually simple and has several nice properties. In k-means, first you can, this is a mathematical formulation. For each point, you define the distance to the closest center, and then the centers are defined now by minimizing the sum of the square of these distances. Of course, this is the way you do this estimation is by backfitting, using backfitting algorithm, where you estimate centers, assign points, and then recalculate centers, assign points again, etc., etc. And all these converge to local minimum. And then you do that from many start points, and you hope that the smallest value for the objective function you are optimizing is close to a global minimum. In 1997, there was a very important paper by Cuesta Albertos et al., not far from here, in Valladolid. People from Valladolid noted that k-mean is not robust against outliers and proposed robust alternative to the k-means. And here in this talk, we will present another alternative, another robust alternative that we call k-tau. And we will use the concept of scale estimators. Scale estimators are, depends on, of course, we have some numbers and we want to calculate the absolute, have an idea of the size of the absolute values. So the scale is an estimate of the size of the absolute values of the numbers that we are dealing with. And for some function to be called an scale, should have several properties. For example, should depend only on the absolute values which we want to measure and summarize. If all the numbers are 0, the scale should be 0. If one set of numbers is systematically larger than the other, the scale should be larger for the first set. And if you multiply all the numbers by a constant, this constant, absolute value of this constant should multiply the scale of the original data. What are examples of scales? Examples of scales is, for example, L2 scale, which is the average of the square of the mu sub I square rooted. Another scale is L1 scale, which is just the average of the absolute values. And L2 and L1 scales are not robust. But the median scale, for example, the median of the absolute values of the numbers, this is a robust estimator of a scale. Meaning that it will not be much influenced by the presence of a small fraction of very large values or very small values in the sample. Another very important estimator of a scale has been proposed by Huber in '64. And this estimator of a scale is not defined by a closed form formula. It's defined in an implicit manner by an equation. Here, you take this equation equal to B, where rho is a function which is even, increasing, bounded, and you take the maximum of this value. You can always take the maximum of the rho function to be 1. And then B is taken usually to be 1/2, so that the estimator will have maximum robustness. These type of scales improve the median in the sense because the median is very robust, but could be inefficient for Gaussian data. These type of scales, the M scales, you can tune them to be highly robust, but then there will be very inefficient, or you can tune them to be highly efficient, but then there will be not so much so robust. But then you can work with the trade-off, and you can find a way in which you compromise robustness and efficiency. In 1988, Victor and me came up with another scale, which we call tau scales. We were not very imaginative. I think that the word S was already taken for a scale, so we took T was not a good idea. Well, we call it tau. The idea of this scale was to get around this trade-off between efficiency and robustness. Our goal with this scale was to achieve both things together. So to have a scale that is at the same time highly robust and highly efficient. For that, we have to use two rho functions. Huber used only once, so we had to use one more. Instead of two rho functions, rho1 and rho2, and then with the rho function rho1, we calculated a scale as Huber proposed. But then we did this square. We defined the tau square scale by this expression here. Is the average of the rho2 applied to these normal now standardized residuals with the initial scale. And we show that this scale can be, so we can now choose tuning constant for row 1 and row 2 so that you can achieve both things at the same time. You can be highly efficient and highly robust simultaneously. Now in what comes in this talk, I'm going to try to explain how we will use this type of scale to make an alternative to the k-means, which will be a robust alternative. And in the case of the k-means, okay, so the tau scale is as follows. We will calculate these distances for each observation. Here it should be for each observation, we will calculate the closest, the distance to the closest mu, and then we will calculate the minimum of that in mu, and the argument of that, we will optimize this quantity. Of course, this is a very complicated quantity to optimize, but we can do it the same way as you do with k-means. We can do assignment of points to clusters and then minimization, finding new centers, and back and forth. And so we have a computing algorithm which I will explain. Notice that instead of S sub tau, you have here the L2 scale. This would be just k-means. So the only thing that we are doing regarding k-means is replacing the scale that we are optimizing for calculating the centers. The assignment we keep at the time, for the time being, is the same as in the k-means case. We just assign the points to the closest center. So the cluster centers, in the case of the k-means, the cluster centers are simple average of the data. In the case of tau, k-taus, the cluster centers are, instead of being average of the values in the cluster, are weighted average, where the weights are given by this expression. We have a weight function, and then we calculate the average over the elements in the cluster, weighted by these weights. And the weights, of course, depends on the data and depends through the weights are a linear combination of the derivatives of the function rho 1 and rho 2. These are the derivatives of the rho function. And an and bn are quantities that you calculate at just once for each sample, and depends on the rho function, the data, and the current scale. So I am not going to go into much details, but just showing that there are simple formulas to calculating an and bn. And once you do that, you can do the reweighting. And once you do the reweighting, you get the new centers, and you can now operate back and forth the same way as you do in the backfitting algorithm for k-means. This is a picture of the weight function. You see when the value of the residuals, when the value of the distance to the centers is close to 0, the weight is 1. When it is far from 0, the weight goes down to 0, and this is a way to control for outliers. So points that are very far from the center are not given much weight. And so the algorithm is, we will do some initialization. We will then we will given the current values for the centers and for the cluster assignments, and for
and for the scale, for the tau scale, for the S scale, we do the following updating. So these are assumed to be given, and once we have this given, we will recalculate things. Oops, too fast. Our algorithm is fast, but not that fast. And here, this I plus 1 is just a mistake. It's just the old W function that we have applied to these distances, which are the distances to the given centers scaled by the current scale. And this is calculated very quickly. Then S is once we have these mu's, we can calculate also we have to calculate the new scale, and then we iterate. And this will usually converge after 3 or 4 iterations. And the stopping criterion is that all the cluster centers do not change anymore. And then after we do that, we repeat this several times. We do several initializations because we are dealing with highly non-convex problems. Therefore, we converge to local minimum, but we want to get the global minimum. And to have a hope for that, we have to iterate to initialize this algorithm several times. So now K-means has another limitation. K-means has the limitation that the assignment of the points to the cluster and everything in K-means is done using Euclidean distance. And Euclidean distances are okay when the clusters are generated by distribution which are spherical. But if the distribution are not spherical, but if they are elliptical, then the assignment of points to cluster should take this into account. So after we finish the calculation of the cluster center, so we have the cluster centers and we have the assignment of points to clusters. Now we are going to make a reassignment of point to cluster, but now having taken into consideration the potential shape of the clusters. Because we know the cluster, we can calculate these new centers and new covariance matrices using, for example, robust S estimators. And once we do that, then the cluster assignment can be done using Mahalanobis distances, where Mahalanobis distances are distances that take into consideration the shape, the elliptical shape of the distribution of the cluster. And also, at this step, we want to identify outliers, which are outliers in this case, in the case of clusters. Outliers are points that are far from all the cluster centers, too far, unusually far away from all the clusters that we found. And so any point that is farther away than this cutoff value here, a chi-square cutoff values because of approximation to the distribution of the Mahalanobis distance, it is considered an outlier. Now I'm going to show you a couple of examples. One is, the first example is just to illustrate the method, the mechanics of the method. And the second example I'm going to show you is to show you potential applications. And okay, so we will go example by example. In the first one is an example that that comes from a paper. This data is artificial data generated in a publication by Garcia Escudero et al. 2008. Incidentally, in this area of robust cluster estimation is very strong in Spain because of this group in Valladolid. All these people are pioneers and continue to work very well on robust cluster techniques. So we took one of their data set, which they call M5, in which you have, it is just bivariate data. So there are 3 centers. These are the centers. And the covariance matrix one is simple, the identity. This other is also still they are independent. And in the third case, the sample has some correlation. So there will be there will be 1,800 regular points and 200 outliers for this in this artificial data. And the 1,800 points are 20% on the first population, 40% in the second, and 40% in the third. So we have 2 large clusters and 1 smaller cluster. 2 clusters are spherical, and 1 cluster is elliptical. And there are outliers. And the outliers are uniformly generated in a box that contains all the data. So this is a picture of the data generated. This you can say, see, this is the small, this is the cluster with small variance. This is with larger variances. And this is the elliptical one, the one with correlation. And there are the points outside are the 200 outliers that do not belong to any of the clusters. So the goal in this case is to estimate the cluster centers and the assignment of points to the clusters. And these are the now this is the same picture as before, but now it's colorful with the clusters represented by colors. I have to get good. When I get good at this, I don't have to use it anymore. So these are the clusters, and the outliers are the black dots outside the clusters. And so this is what k-tau, our algorithm will find these centers, the black points there. This is the initial step of our algorithm. We'll find these centers. And these are, using the second step, in which we take into consideration the shape of the cluster, then this is the cluster assignment that we do, which very much resembles the original data, the true data. And here we have, these are the green points, very large points, but just to help visualization. But the green are the true centers. The blue are the k-tau, and in these triangles, the red ones are the k-means. You can see the k-mean is mostly affected in the case of this cluster. In the other 2 clusters, the k-means is not too much, but this is the cluster with largest variability. And so in the cluster with larger variability and outliers, the k-mean center has been affected the most. If the outliers, instead of, now we make larger the square here and move the outlier farther away. The outliers has been multiplied so that they are move farther away from the cluster. Now we see the center of this cluster is over here. So the k-means can be very badly affected by large outliers. And the effect of outliers is going to be much larger even if the outliers are on
asymmetrics in a way. For example, if the outliers, instead of being around the cloud, the outliers are mostly on one side or one subspace in higher dimensions. Now the center of k-means will be completely uninformative, and the assignments will be also uninformative. So this is the first example in which is just illustrated the mechanics of the tau algorithm. And now we are entering the second example, and I want to make a case for the application of robust clustering for the processing of digitized images. This is a vast field of potential application in computer vision, anomaly detection, etc., etc. So we have very, very many possible applications, and I will show you one application so that you will see the potential for the others. And this is an image, a digitized image, and this has been used. This type of images have been used, for example, to find stranded boats with 300 people that were stranded outside off the coast of Nigeria, I think. And then this is another picture in which this is a micro image of the blood, circulating blood. This is a picture of circulating blood, and many of these pictures are taken and examined to find metastases of a tumor, micrometastases of a tumor, which can be done by, of course, human inspection, but this is a very tedious work for people looking at hundreds of pictures. They get fatigued, and so if we can find algorithms that will do this automatically, it will be better for finding these metastases spots. And so I'm going to explain a little bit of how images can be represented by data and how this data can be processed to do automatic interpretation of pictures. This is for people that has been very late watching TV in Argentina in my old times. This is what you see. This is the non-signal picture that after the TV finish and you are still sitting there, well, this is what you see. And it is a low resolution picture. It's only 2,000 pixels, and it is a nice picture to introduce the ideas because it is very simple, and the colors are very neatly separated. And well, this color picture can be represented in by a three-dimensional vector. Each pixel you can assign to each pixel 3 numbers, R, G, and B for red, green, and blue. These are numbers between 0 and 1, and they will give you the color of the picture. For example, if you have 1, 0, 0, it will be red. If you have 0, 1, 0, it's green, etc., etc. And now this is half of the image I have shown you before, and this is the 3D representation of this image. So each point in this image is a point in this three-dimensional space. For example, here are the black. All these black are here. Here are all the white because these points there, etc., etc. Now, this is a real image now, and it is a very high-resolution image. This is part of one of the pictures sent by the Mars rover Curiosity, and we got this from NASA. They made it available, and it is the number of pixels in this picture is
over 330, almost 330,000 pixels. It's very high resolution. And in this picture, we have three materials. We have sand. This is the soil in Mars. There is metal, and the metal is the two kinds. Is some metal which is opaque and shiny. So there are two types of metals and sand. This is all we have in this picture. And if you make the RGB representation, this is what you see. There is not much. This is not very good, really. But people in image processing found this problem before. This is due to high correlation. And there is a transformation that you can transform the RGB data to the intensity and saturation data by these very simple formulas. And once you do that, this is the representation now in the 2D representation. And this is mostly sand, and these are the two types of metals. And for now, I'm going to show you that we will do cluster analysis here, and the initial cluster analysis will be to be able to cluster the type of materials. But this will be only the first part of the example. In the second part of the example, I will show you how a small piece of one of the materials that is missing, that suppose that you are looking for, you can find by this approach. So what we did is we summarize the image into approximately 3,000 cells of 10 by 10 pixels. So we have each data point for us is a 200-dimensional point because it has 100 intensity and 100 saturation values. And so the picture has three components, as I said before: the sand, the metals, opaque and shiny. And here is the original picture. Here is what tau can do. This is the clustering done by the k-tau algorithm. This is k-means, and this is k-means after some outliers have been removed. But the outliers are not at all evident in this case. You need to have a very good, robust estimator of cluster to find the outliers and to be able to realize the clustering. Notice that this part here is this shade over there. So this shaded part has been, k-means found, mistakenly thought that this is metal. And because it is, but it's not because of the values of these, not of the values of these pixels, but it is because of the values of this pixel here, which are extremely opaque metal. So it's a piece of opaque metal that is unusually opaque, and why it is unusually opaque is because it is being shaded. And so this metal is the same as this. The two metals are the same, but this is very opaque compared to that because of the shade. And so if you eliminate this, if you downweight these points here, k-means does very similar to the tau algorithm. And now this part is recognized as sun again, and the most important thing here in this picture, for the example, is this piece of metal here, which is this is a piece of opaque metal in the sun that NASA thinks that has been lost by the rover. And so this little piece of metal here, you could find this metal out in the way I am going to explain later, automatically. But you won't be able to do that with k-means because it doesn't recognize it anymore. It doesn't see it. So I'm going to skip the analysis of the outliers because time. I think that I have 2 minutes. But I'm going to try to show okay, so now I'm going to explain how this technology can be used to find something that you are looking for, and you can make an algorithm so that the computer can do that automatically. And so once we have done the first step of clustering, we have found the 3 types of materials in the picture. We have 2,500 cells that are sand, 405 cells that are opaque metal, and 329 cells that are shiny metal. And we know that the screw, we are looking for a screw which is opaque metal. So we are going to ignore all the sand, we are going to ignore all the shiny metal, and we are going to concentrate on the cluster, in the cluster that we found of opaque metal, which makes approximately 13% of the image. So now we are going to do a second cluster analysis, but we are not just going to look only at the opaque metal cells. And these opaque metal cells will be now here. These points represent now the geographic location of the opaque metal cells that we found in the first layer of clustering. And then we are going to look for outliers in this new geographic representation of the cluster that represent the type of material that we are looking for. And therefore, in this case, any outlier, like for example, this will be a candidate for the piece that we are looking for. And as you can see, and this is a very big outlier because it's far from here we have 3 clusters now, 2 clusters, and this is a big outlier. But this cannot be done with k-means because k-means doesn't see it has missed this point affected by the outliers in the previous cluster steps. Well, I think that I made it in the 2 minutes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ruben, for this nice talk.